All right, so this is my submission for the Game Manager and Persistence project for Game Programming 3. So basically I have a persistent scene here that has a Game Manager, a Save Manager, and a UI Manager. And each of these derive from a generic singleton class. So I keep those within the persistent scene. As for the other scenes, they have the scene loader. I'll open this up here. Oops. Oh, there we go. So yeah, I have load scene, persistent scene with the scene mode additive. And basically, I can show how it works here. Let's start from the main menu as an entry point. So you can see here in the hierarchy, you can see the main menu scene has the scene loader object. And the persistent scene serves as an entry point, so all my managers get grabbed from that. So if I switch scenes, so you can see levels just have the scene loader, and the persistent scene contains these three objects. As you can see, there's only one game manager at a time. So yeah, I'll test out the saving and loading. Actually, I'll get into that a little bit. So yeah, most of this was pretty straightforward. Just following a tutorial. Um, I can say that for this, I actually attempted to do it without the tutorial first and succeeded with that. Binary formatting, there's lots of information on Google for that, so it wasn't too difficult. Um, so yeah, I have like my serializable class, player data, it has all the variables. My save game function creates a binary formatter, creates a file at the persistent path, and then it creates the data um, based on the stats and serializes that to a file and closes it. As for the load game, if a file exists, then it opens the file and it deserializes the file and casts that to the data and then closes the file. And then it basically just assigns the data that we just retrieved to the stats, and it's that simple. And if a file doesn't exist, I'm just creating a new file here, and then loading the first scene. I also added a delete save function. It just calls file.delete, another function I learned about, and it resets the stats back to the defaults. I was going to say my UI manager is also laid out quite differently. As I said, I didn't follow the tutorial from the get-go, so I have a player stats object that I grab off the start. I have all these text objects. I have all my buttons that I add listeners to, and then update UI just updates it based on the stats. I have an increase stat and a decrease stat button. It just switches through the stat name. I converted it to lower just so it's all the same. And then yeah, add or decrease the stat. Nothing crazy here. And then update the UI. What else to go through here? The game manager is very basic. Just all the singletons call the base.awake. It creates creates a singleton. And then I have a key code just to go through different scenes. And now I will show the saving and loading. if Unity ever loads here. All right, so health is default 100. You can play with a few of these stats, increase them, and I'll save that. I'll back out of that, replay, and load. You can see all the stats are there. Do it one more time for safe measure. Maybe I'll just, yeah, put them all to 4, save. Okay, the defaults, load the data. You can also delete a save. As I said, it resets the stats. Boom. Yeah, and I also added a little quit button just to be able to exit. Yeah, what went right? I rarely say this, but pretty well everything went right with this project. I had prior experience reading and writing to a file, and saving and loading wasn't too much different, just a few extra steps. Singletons were also familiar, and I implement this singleton pattern in every game I make. Um, I can say that using a generic class of singleton, I can see how that'd be very useful. Having having child objects of a game manager is always something I did before, but having a generic class that any manager can derive from, I can see how that would keep things decoupled, and plan to use that in architecture and future projects. But what went wrong? As for what went wrong, nothing really. I did have a really weird bug where I'd hit play and it just wouldn't let me stop. Um, at which point I realized Unity was crashing, and the reason was I had this scene loader attached to a manager, so it was just getting stuck in an infinite loop and loading scenes, and yeah, that's about the only thing I really struggled with, and it was just carelessness on my part. What I learned from this project, I think I've noticed my growth as a developer, which I find rare to identify in myself, especially since progress can be so minimal and gradual at times. Like the fact that I finished this project in a few hours is an indicator that I've made some strides. Um, and what can others learn from me? Well, I think that most of this project was following a tutorial and honestly didn't require too much problem solving. However, what others could learn from me is focusing on understanding why the code works and not just following steps. Like, for example, I tried solving this on my own without the tutorial and succeeded. Then I followed the tutorial and it made even more sense to me. And experimenting with different methods within the file class, stuff like that, really deepened my understanding. So, all in all, it was a pretty successful project. I think I, you know, meet all the requirements and I was happy with my work. So that's all.